Hello, good evening, and thank you very much for joining me on Business Tonight. Government has managed to secure a favorable interest rate on the cost of issuing its first 5-year bond. It will be paying an interest of 18.75%, far lower than the rate it got in 2016. George Wiafe has more on the impact of this on the economy and the cost of credit.
The 18.75% that government had decided to pay investors is far lower than the 24.75% that they paid in July 2016. A careful look at the current 5-year bond that is being traded on the Ghana Stock Exchange shows that the state is paying between 19 and 24%. Therefore, one can describe this as a good one for the economy and the cost of credit. However, some may have argued that looking at events that have taken place in the economy, there is reduction in non-performing loans and the treasury bill rates over the past 6 months, the 18.75% was expected. But could this rate be a sign of the new administration's plan in place to restructure the country's debts and the cost of interest on these bonds? Government yesterday managed to raise their 420 million Ghana cedis in its 5-year bond that was actually targeting 600 million Ghana cedis. It, however, accepted 369 million Ghana cedis.
And that was a Business Desk report by George Wiafe. Now, some energy experts have expressed concern over what they say is the lack of due diligence by Parliament on some of the major power contracts signed by the previous administration. In a bid to address the power crisis in the last 3 years, the government entered into some arrangements which saw the deployment of emergency power plants like the Car Power Batch and Ameri plant, among others. But speaking with Joy Business, Executive Director of Kumasi Institute of Technology and Environment, KITE, Ishmael Ejokumhene, says that this unduly cost the country more because of the many deals that were not duly scrutinized.
Most of these issues were flagged, and think tanks and the then opposition raised red flags about so many of the deals. Ameri, for example, if you consider the fact that the cost of owning those plants at the then rate was cheaper than the agreement we had entered into. There were all sorts of issues that were raised. The VRA senior staff, they are right up in arms against the board and the management because of what they perceive to be some unfair advantage that they were trying to give to the Ameri people. There were a lot of issues. I, for example, never understood why we should contract an emergency power plant for 10 years. Okay, Car Power should have remained an emergency power plant. We needed the Car Power because it was the quickest that we could get under the circumstances. But why do you contract an emergency power plant for 10 years? If we had said, come in, help us deal with the crisis, afterwards we open it to open tender. Because with the same Car Power as a badge, I believe if we were to open it to tender, we could have gotten something that would probably have been cheaper. I also didn't understand why we would bring in Ameri, we didn't bring its fuel, and it was going to compete with gas from the Atuabu.
There were so many issues.
So many issues. But what I believe is that now they are in government, so it's no longer rumors. Investigate those deals. If there are any, the sad part is that most of these deals were actually passed by our parliament. So even if there were fraud, what were the parliamentarians there? What were they supposed to do? The moment they okayed it, it got the blessing of the nation to move ahead, whether we like it or not. In some cases, we might not be able to do anything at all, but just talk about them. Because if the contracts are such that you can't vary the terms to the disadvantage of any of the parties, you cannot do anything. You touch those contracts, they result in judgment debt.
The Tema Oil Refinery Tor has downplayed fears of any negative impact of the gas explosion at its facility on the supply of petroleum products on the market. There was an explosion yesterday at the refinery which affected a furnace at the crude distillation unit, forcing management to shut down the unit. The facility helps in refining crude into other forms of petroleum products. Looking at the market share of Tor, some industry watchers are worried over possible shortage, but acting CEO of Tor, Isaac Osei, allayed fears when he spoke with my colleague George Wiafe.
When at about 10:36
or thereabouts, there was an explosion in one of the furnaces that we have there. It was so, as a result of the explosion, there was some fire which was contained very quickly. And that particular equipment, isolated from the rest of the equipment that we have at the refinery. And as we speak now, there's been a complete isolation. We've been able to flush out the crude oil in the pipes and return the crude oil to the crude oil tank. In effect, what it means is that instead of operating 45,000 barrels per day, we will be operating at 28,000 because we will use the older furnaces.
But this wouldn't have any impact on supply of petroleum product onto the market?
Not immediately, because we do have some stocks in storage. But we are working as quickly as possible to bring everything back to normalcy, and that is all I'll say for now.
The economists will say, all other things being equal, are you hopeful that maybe by next week things should be up?
Well, I cannot give you a time frame until the engineers have finished their work. I mean, they'll be inspecting the stuff, and we'll be receiving 2 engineers from the Italian manufacturers of that equipment.
Acting CEO of the Tema Oil Refinery, Isaac Osei. Now let's be crossing over for some international business news updates. And Ant Financial Payments, arm of commerce giant Alibaba, is buying US-based MoneyGram for $880 million. MoneyGram has about 350,000 outlets in nearly 200 countries. Ant Financial has more than 630 million users with a big market share in the online payment industry in China. The acquisition could help the company extend the lead as well as expand overseas as competition is growing in China with rival Tencent's WeChat payment system. US-listed MoneyGram's share rose by nearly 9% after the news broke out. The takeover has been approved by MoneyGram's board of directors. And that's all in business for tonight. For more business news updates, you can log on to myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji Riafi.